Welcome, everyone, to the HR Management Simulation People Analytics. I'm pleased today to have Professor Tim Rogmans joining us. And Tim is the developer of this specific simulation along with his colleagues at the Sim Institute. And what we're going to cover today is an introduction. I'm going to introduce both Tim, and Tim will introduce his simulation. And then we'll go through a simulation demo. We'll see both the student perspective or the player perspective in the simulation, as well as what facilitators or faculty see as they're running through it. We'll also cover learning objectives and lessons from the simulation to see how it might fit into a workshop or course that you're running. And finally, we'll wrap up with next steps and additional resources, including materials that are available for helping you if you're planning on running the simulation, what you need. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end. With that, I'd like to introduce Professor Tim Rogmans. Tim is the managing director of the Sim Institute, which is a company that develops business simulation games. And he was previously a professor of strategic management at the Zayed University in Dubai, and also has done consulting in Europe. And the Sim Institute simulations are available through Forio. So Tim actually developed his first simulation on Epicenter several years ago now. It was, I believe, Tim, 2018. And his first simulation was Econland. That has been run, Tim, I was looking at the stats recently, over 500,000 times. And then after Econland, Tim developed another sim called Coffee Shop Simulation. And I see some familiar names on the participant list today. And some of you, I believe, have run Coffee Shop before. That's been run over 170,000 times. So, and his next most popular sim in the catalog is Net Zero with over 100,000 runs. So Tim has developed, and his colleagues and team at Sim Institute have developed quite a few very popular simulations in the catalog. These are the sims that Sim Institute has developed. So there's 8 of them total here. The top 4 on here are really about business strategy. So they're kind of business strategy topics. The bottom 4, the middle or the second row there, are sustainability simulations. And of course, sustainability simulations also have strategy components to them, but they're kind of broadly categorized into those 2 buckets. And Tim and his colleagues at Sim Institute have won numerous awards and also accolades from various publications for their simulations. Tim, I believe that the 2022 Series Play gold medal win was for Econland. Is that right?
No, actually, Econland got a silver medal there.
Okay.
We didn't put that on this slide. The 2022 gold was for Net Zero.
Okay. And the Financial
And
Times article was also for Net Zero, I believe. Is that right?
that's right.
Yeah.
So they have awards for sustainable business education.
Excellent. And then I don't know actually what the 2024 last year's gold was for. Which one was that?
That was for Fashion Forward, the
Fantastic.
circular
Congratulations on
circular
that.
economy.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
really great. And all of these sims have been developed on Forio's platform, Forio Epicenter. And obviously, Tim and his colleagues at Sim Institute have been prolific in terms of their development. And today, of course, what we're talking about is the HR management simulation, people analytics. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tim and have him introduce that simulation.
Yes, excellent, excellent. So I'll give you a quick overview, and then I'll give you a demo. I think that's the most useful exposure that you can have on it. But in this simulation, you play the role of a human resources director, and you make different strategic HR decisions on staffing, compensation, training, and other items. And this simulation is partly to learn about HR management and partly to learn about how you can use data and analytics to make better decisions. And then that use of data and analytics is then specific to making decisions that relate to your staff. So what you obtain with this simulation is an ability to interpret performance indicators and employee feedback in order to inform your HR strategies. I'll show you that in a moment. And the learning objectives are really all about what you would like your HR managers or even general managers who make decisions related to people what you like them to be able to do. So that includes, analyzing information and metrics in order to get desirable outcomes. And in this simulation, desirable outcomes are about customer satisfaction, employee engagement, employee productivity, and of course, financial results. People learn how to make strategic decisions in key HR areas. They get immediate feedback and data that then they incorporate in new sets of decisions. So that is in a nutshell what people learn. I will recap that at the end of the demo, but maybe now best is if I can share my screen and show you what it looks like. And I will demo it and almost brief you as if you were a player. If you were using the simulation as a learner and with a facilitator, I think there's 3 ways to do the brief. One is you can show debrief slides. Second, you can show people the video here. It's 4 minutes. And after that, people will know what to do. Or thirdly, you can just show them how to play the simulation for 1 round of decisions. And that's what I will do with you today. It's explained to me here that in this simulation, you are the HR director of a call center of a telecom company that has a large customer base. And what you need to do is make strategic and operational decisions related to different HR topics. And then ultimately, you will be measured according to your success in terms of employee engagement, customer satisfaction, and your cost. And since this is a call center, your costs are measured as cost per call. Our simulations can be played in teams. I can just show you without going into detail here how that works. I see here the people in my team, and only the editor in my team can make decisions. And when there's no editor or somebody else in my team is the editor, I see here this become editor button. All I need to do is click it, and now I can make decisions on behalf of my team. I can see here in how to play some information about the company that I'm running and my challenge in the simulation. So at the start of the simulation, my call center has 500 agents who answer queries from customers and 25 team leaders. Together, they handle 5 million calls per year. Agents are recruited externally, and team leaders are promoted from within. For simplicity, everybody works full-time. Call centers open every day, including weekends from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And there's a base compensation package in the company that includes, legally mandated healthcare. So I see here my main performance criteria that I already mentioned: engagement, customer satisfaction, and cost per call. And then, learners at whatever level they play, they always want to know, how do I win this simulation? People get competitive, they get excited. They say, how do I beat everybody else? Well, for that purpose, this simulation has a composite score, which is the sum of your employee engagement score, your customer satisfaction score, plus the reduction in the cost per call that you have achieved. So let's say at the start, your score might be 3.5 plus 3.8 plus 0. And it makes it clear to you what you need to impact. And then as a facilitator, I can tweak that formula to some extent. If I say, well, I think engagement should be more important than the other factors, or one of the other factors should be more important, then I can do that. So this is all you need to know about playing the simulation. The rest will become clear as you play. Learners also have a glossary of terms available to them. And these are the things that you would want them to be learning about as they play. The simulation then starts with a little bit of news. These are events in the environment that you need to take into account when playing. And the most important information in the news is really about the expected change in the call volume. So in the early years of the simulation, there are more and more calls coming into the call center. So your challenge is very much about retaining your current employees and keeping them happy and making sure that you recruit enough good people all the time. But then at some point in year 3, the challenge becomes the opposite, because then the company is implementing an interactive voice response system that automatically answers a very large proportion of the incoming calls. So this allows you with your learners to discuss the impact of AI on jobs, right? If you read some of the articles now, some people are saying in 6 years' time, there won't be call centers anymore because everything will be answered by AI. And that may be an extreme scenario, but in this simulation, after a couple of years, your volume of incoming calls that need to be handled by a human being are dramatically going down, and then that leads you to a different challenge as an HR manager. So I review this every year. Now I've looked at it for year 1. And then as a learner, I also have available to me some data that will help me to make decisions. It's explained here that over the last 12 years, the call center has gathered data about key HR metrics. These metrics are all explained here and defined. And then I can develop my own scatter plots to see the relations between different variables. Of course, it's mentioned that correlation between 2 variables doesn't mean causation necessarily, but it's worth looking at. So I might say, well, what could be the relationship between customer satisfaction and employee engagement? And we see it's a straight line and all the points are really close to the line. And this makes sense. Happy employees will make happy customers. Employees will be more cheerful when they answer the call, and the relationship is clear. And you see this, of course, in many companies and industries. And then you think, well, if then my key is to have engaged employees, what would be correlated with engaged employees? And you could see, for example, well, what about my decision on how many days people can work from home? And that decision ranges between 0 and 5. And I see, well, there's some correlation, but it's not completely strong. And there's a logic behind all of these relations that we show, but at the same time, of course, you can also dispute them and say, well, maybe in my situation, I would expect a slightly different relationship. I can also show you here the correlation between the salary difference and employee engagement. So how much extra do I pay compared to the industry average? And there, as you might expect, the relationship is quite strong. All of these data items are captured here in the table. And that table I can download as a PDF, or more likely as a CSV file that allows me to import it into Excel or maybe into other statistical packages. And the nice thing in the simulation is that every year that you make decisions and you get results, one data column is added to this table. So after 1 year, you will see 13 and then 14, and that underlines the idea that as you gain more experience, you get more data, you can make decisions that are better supported by information. Sometimes people really get into this and sometimes they don't. I think it's up to you as a facilitator to decide how much emphasis you want to give to this analysis point. Then I can move to decisions. And it says, well, every year I make decisions in 3 areas: policies, rewards, and HR planning. So let's go to policies. And there on the left, I see 3 policy decisions that I can make. One is about my span of control. So how many agents report to one team leader? If I make that number larger, then of course I will save cost because I need fewer team leaders. But on the other hand, maybe then agents are not getting enough coaching and mentoring or other types of management from team leaders. I see here, by the way, as I change any number, I see my projected cost per call is changing here above. So right now it's $5.87. Let's say if I click this little circle here, it will go back to last year's value. And then you see that 587 also changed slightly. So that's like the modeling part of it. So you see, if I make that decision and everything turns out as per expectation, which it may not do, but then that would be my cost per call. Then I can decide on training expenditure per employee. Again, I see this number here change, and the work from home days. Then on the right, I can adopt a number of policy initiatives. And I need to prioritize which ones. I cannot do them all at the same time. Some of these are good and some of these are less good. And you get a complete explanation of each one in the teaching note. But I found it interesting, for example, that Google did an experiment where they increased the number of interviews of employees from 3 to 4, and then they tracked over time the performance of employees who had been recruited based on 3 interviews or 4 interviews, and then they found out there was no difference. And then they concluded, well, actually, then we might as well go back to 3 interviews. So that was a nice example, and it's illustrated here in the feedback for people on how you can analyze data to make better decisions on HR matters. So I might keep that one for now, and I can also choose onboarding. And then what onboarding means is explained here in the tooltip. So these are my policy decisions. On rewards, I make a set of decisions for my agents and team leaders. I see here the industry average salary. If I pay more than that, of course, team leaders will be happy. But again, my cost per call will go up. I can decide on extra pay for the weekend, a performance bonus, and not only the amount of the performance bonus, but also how I distribute it between employees based on individual or organizational performance. And then I have extra benefits like additional health insurance that is also explained here, and a gym membership. And I can choose the same policy decisions for my team leaders. I'm just entering slightly ill thought through decisions, but if you play this, you will take some time. And you see here your decisions for the year and for all the years in the simulation for agents and here for team leaders. And then finally, I do staffing planning or manpower planning decisions in this section here called HR planning. And I think this is a really nice section. It starts by telling me what is my incoming volume of work. Well, last year I had 5 million calls. This year I'm expecting 5.5 million calls. And if that number materializes, which in the simulation it will, then I need 10% more people than last year, right? Then I need 550 people or agents instead of 500. But then how many people I will really need depends on a number of assumptions. So if my absenteeism, which last year was 8.2%, if that would be higher, then I need more people. And you can see that reflected in a required agent. But on the other hand, if their efficiency would also go up and they would answer more calls per hour, maybe because I trained them well, then my required agents would go down. So I think you can transfer this thinking to many industries. You know, if you manage a hospital or a university or even a factory, you know, you have certain drivers for the volume of your work. And then with a few assumptions, you can translate that into a staffing plan. You can also make decisions about dismissals. These are performance-related dismissals. And let's say only people who've done poorly 2 years in a row I will dismiss, or maybe all underperformance. And you see the planned dismissals here increasing. Then staff turnover tends to be quite high in call centers. We set the default at 20%. Maybe I can assume that it will be a little bit less if I take other good HR management decisions, and similarly for the team leaders. And all of my decisions and assumptions are then summarized here in this waterfall chart that explain to me how I move from the starting number of agents to the required number of agents. And based on my departures and dismissals and promotions to team leaders, it says, well, I need to recruit 74 agents. And for team leaders, it's a little bit simpler. I don't recruit them from the outside, but I'm promoting 2 agents to team leaders. So this is my staffing planning. If I know that I need to recruit this many agents, then I can impact my recruitment success by determining a recruitment budget and a referral bonus for employees. So that covers the HR planning decisions. And some people will use this with a real focus on that aspect of HR planning. I can see all of my decisions in the summary page, and if I would want, I can go back to the individual tabs to make any changes to them. But if I'm happy, I can submit and then review my results in a dashboard. And it says, okay, after 1 year, my employee engagement has gone up and my customer satisfaction has gone up. My cost per call has gone down a tiny bit, and my composite score is now 8.6. So I've done quite well, perhaps because I'm paying my people well, and analyzing the dashboards further will help me to understand my results. I see here feedback on initiatives. I mentioned that in this simulation, increasing the number of interviews didn't do much for me, but I've made good decisions elsewhere. I see here a summary of my performance, employee engagement, customer satisfaction, cost per call, and then the composite score. I see this also in a table. All the information in graphs is also available in tables, and that's partly also for accessibility purposes. I can copy any of the tables to clipboard and paste them into Excel if I wish. And usually I would do that at the end of the simulation when I have all the years available. Then I have a few more dashboards. One on staffing. I see here the waterfall chart as it actually happened. So that may be a little bit different from what I planned, but these are my actual results. And then I can switch between agents and team leaders. What has actually happened here, I have a few unfilled vacancies. So I haven't been able to recruit everybody that I was planning to recruit. But absenteeism has gone down, staff turnover has gone down a little bit, and I see here also the reasons why my staff are leaving, split between pay, work conditions, and opportunities. Then on the recruitment side, my recruitment success rate is still not bad. 97% of the vacancies that I had, I've succeeded to fill. But I do have 9 unfilled vacancies. It's not a huge number compared to my total number of agents. And then here on the right, I see my cost per recruit. On the people performance side, I get lots of employee feedback, and that feedback is driven by the decisions that I made and by the results that I got. So maybe you noticed that we gave gym membership to the agents and not the team leaders. So we see here one of the team leaders is upset. Why do the agents get gym membership but not the team leaders? And that is, of course, then reflected in their staff engagement. So here we see that staff engagement calls per agent per hour is this efficiency variable. And then we have a performance rating, which would go up when people are engaged and when they have been well trained. So then more on the business side, we also have performance of the call center. We see the average waiting time for customers. And of course, if the waiting time is long, then the calls abandoned will get even higher. And the total calls is also given. Engagement satisfaction we've already seen, and then some other business measures. So this is after 1 year. I will just show you then the news for year 2. Still now the number of incoming calls is expected to increase. I can, if I want, go through the analysis. I see now the 13th year added here to the right, and then I make new decisions on all of these items. Now, every year, 2 new policy initiatives become available. So they replace the older ones that I've already chosen. And we do it like this so that people don't get like a very, very long list of policy initiatives to read through in the beginning. Now, every time there's something new, and here, for example, blind hiring or peer reviews, and all of these are described. So we do this for the number of years in the simulation, which is 6. And then at the end, I will see my results. At any time, if I wish, I can reset the simulation and start a new game. And when I do that, I think it's also just worth pointing out that when I'm in between games, I can go to the View Runs tab, and I can see here all the games that I have previously played. And I can see here how many years I played, my main results, and then I can even enter that game and analyze what I've done. This is a game that I played in the past that was actually completed. So that's nice. I always have a record of that. This is the student interface. Now, at this point, let me just switch browser tab and move to the Facilitator interface to show you what that looks like. You see here, I have a welcome page. I see again the student video, and the main thing, or the first thing that many people think about is, well, I would like to see the results of the people in my group. And I can see that here in the class results. For every group here, I see the name or the names of the people in it, when they played, how many years they played, and then the main score items. And we said, well, the average composite score was the main performance criterion. So here we don't have one because actually this game is still in year 0. It's just somebody who's just entered the simulation. It was the new game that I set up right at the end of my player demo. But I can here see that this particular game does an average a composite score of 8.6. If that game had been played until the end, then that would be the winner. And just like in the View Runs page for the learners, I can go to view details and I can see the entire game that's been played. And of course, that allows me also to see the decisions that people made. So this is nice. As a facilitator, you would just keep on refreshing this page, and then you can use it when people are actually playing the simulation. And you can see if some people are maybe falling behind or others moving too quickly. Then in the settings, I can create a new run. And there's a few things that I can change. I can change the number of years in the simulation if I want to make it slightly shorter or longer, depending on the time available. As mentioned, I can change the weighting in the composite score. So if I make, for example, employee engagement more important, then the other 2 items become less important automatically. And then I see the implication of that on my formula. And then what's nice, I think, also is this drop in call volume that you experience in year 3 and 4 as a result of AI. You can make that more dramatic or less dramatic according to what you think might happen or what you want people to experience. So if you put it on, 40% drop in call volume for year 3 and 4, then like almost the whole call center will disappear and you're left with a huge restructuring challenge. Whereas if you put them both low, then it will be more business as usual. And then, like with all simulations, you can decide how many times people will be able to play. I then save and apply the settings, and they can open the simulation for learners. I will not do that right now because the simulation is closed, and that allows me also to assign people to teams. So here I see the 3 users that I have in my group, and then I can assign them to teams. Maybe I say, well, I'm going to have 2 users per team, or maybe I do it manually, and I just maybe add this user to that particular team, and then that's all I need to do. And then after I've done that, I can only do that when the simulation is closed, but then I can open the simulation again for play. If the simulation is closed, people can see all the background materials and video, but they cannot enter the sessions. So these are the main facilitator screens. Let me then stop sharing and hand it back to you, Michael. Yes, thank you. So in a nutshell, after this, what do people get out of it? Well, they understand that effective use of data and analytics is really key in making good HR management decisions, and they will grow in confidence and in ability of doing so. So they actually think, I can do this. And rather than flying blind, I know that I can use data. I understand the data is never perfect, but using some is better than using none. HR managers must apply these metrics that we discussed. And then, like in many HR exercises, I would imagine people stress the importance of employee engagement in determining customer satisfaction. I always think back of the early Howard Schultz statements, where he would say, our first objective is employee satisfaction. That's what we try to manage and optimize. And then as a result, the customers will be happy. And then as a result, the financial performance will be good. So that's also underlying this simulation. And then people experience that besides salaries, benefits and policies are also important. And then finally, let's call it the very big topic, the importance of technological change, and in particular, the advances in AI will have huge implications on the workplace. They will have implications for organizational structure and staffing levels. One thing that I didn't show you is at some point in the simulation, there's also a technology available suddenly that makes it much easier to monitor people's performance. And that will basically allow you to have a higher span of control. Like one supervisor can manage a larger number of agents without suffering in the quality of management and mentorship. And of course, the simulation cannot make definite statements about, what will happen everywhere in all circumstances. But these are directions that are happening, and then you can discuss how they apply to your organization. So these are the main takeaways for people at the end of the simulation. And then, like you would always have in corporate settings, is this will lead then to discussions about what it will mean for your organization.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about resources that are available for this simulation as you're getting to know it. There are several things that are available. There's a teaching note that is available. And actually, let me just bring that up on the screen right now so you can see a bit around what that looks like. Tim and his colleagues have done a wonderful job putting this together. It's a detailed guide here. And you can see the different sections that are in here. A quick start guide explaining how the simulation works. There's information around how to get started. There's what the student experience is like. Recommendations regarding successful strategies. And of course, that's why the do not copy or post is on here, because that's kind of revealing the answers. We want to make sure that those remain private. And also nice here is details regarding the instructional plan, like a suggestion regarding how to organize the simulation in terms of introducing the sim itself and how to debrief the simulation, and then kind of critical takeaways and things like that. Okay, in addition to that teaching note, one of the things that we can provide is a trial version of the simulation. If you want to try the simulation out on your own, you're welcome to do that, and we can give you a trial along with the teaching note and the debrief slides. And Tim has produced two slide decks that are available for as kind of starting slide decks for the simulation. There's a briefing deck that is an introductory deck that is used for explaining the simulation to a workshop or classroom. And there's also a debrief deck that is a kind of, again, a starting deck that you can use to think about how you would debrief the simulation, give you some guidance on that. There's also a student video and instructor videos. And of course, this webinar recording will be available as well. And if you'd like to receive these materials as well as to receive a trial version of the simulation, you can contact sales@forio.com, and we'll be able to help. We'll set that up for you and get that going. You just send us an email at sales@forio.com and we'll get that set up for you right away. Okay, we're at or near the end of the webinar. We do have several questions that have come up. And by the way, for those of you who have questions that have come up while we've been talking, if there are things that you'd like to ask, feel free to post them into the Q&A portion of the Zoom webinar right now, and we'll answer them. But we have a few questions that have come in. I'm going to start with some questions around just basically how the sim runs, Tim. Someone asks, first off, they say, thank you for showcasing the sim. What is the recommended number of hours needed to run the simulation? Like, how long does the simulation take?
Good. So running a simulation will always involve a brief, a play, and a debrief. The brief you could do in about 10 minutes. The play, you can do in an hour to an hour and a half. Usually people like more towards an hour and a half. And I've experienced many times, especially if people play in teams, then they need a little bit more time to reach consensus. So in teams, they take a little bit longer. So then an hour and a half would be appropriate. And then the debrief is really important. I think it would take a minimum of 20 minutes, but then it depends on your own agenda and could take longer.
Okay, and so total time for the simulation might be like 3 hours-ish, is that right? Or what do you think the total time from beginning to end? Yeah.
Yes. So total time from beginning to end could be 2 as a
Mhm.
minimum, and then could reach 3 and even more if you use it also as an opportunity to explain concepts in the sim.
That makes sense. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering too, Tim, there's probably different modes for running this as well, where you could do an asynchronous, like, imagine like in a classroom or a workshop or something where you introduce the sim and then have them play kind of as a homework assignment or something, right? That'd be another way of breaking it up.
Exactly, exactly. I always think when people are first experiencing the simulation, it's good if the facilitator is there with them.
Hmm.
And there with them can be in person or it can be online, but just to be available. But once they get the hang of it, then they can also do it more independently.
That's helpful. And let's see, a related question from the same person here is there a minimum number of participants that are recommended for running the simulation?
There isn't. It's like any learning activity. If you have, 10 people or more, then it's just wonderful to see how they learn from each other rather than from the facilitator. And if the group becomes too small, then you'll lose that impact.
Right. And
But
I saw it. Go
yeah,
ahead. I'm sorry.
no, but technically speaking, you could run it with 1 or 2 people, but groups of 10 or more work better.
Is there a group size? Do you recommend running it individually, or do you recommend it in small groups, or either? What's your recommendation regarding that?
It can be either, but I've seen people get most engaged when playing in groups. because then they can discuss with each other, and this competitive tension is also a little bit less. It's more collaborative. And if you do that, then I recommend small groups, so 2 or 3 people.
That's helpful. Okay. So, and I imagine too, so we have like 2 or 3 people in small groups, or maybe one. And then if you have more people in a class or a workshop, the facilitator or the faculty are able to compare and contrast results as well, and kind of talk about what strategies worked and what didn't. So that's another component, I suppose, to the
Hmm.
learning that can emerge from the sim too, in terms of minimum
Yeah.
number of participants. Another question is, when was the simulation launched?
In March of this year, so it's quite new.
Yeah, yeah, terrific. All right, we have another question here from someone who's perhaps this person works in a call center. I'm not 100% sure, but is sometimes the incoming calls may grow above 30%. So is there an opportunity for changing the growth rate? I saw at the end of the simulation you can change the reduction in growth, or
Hmm.
the shrinkage that's happening in the final 2 years, right? Due to the AI
Yeah.
component. But is there a way to maybe change the growth elsewhere?
Yes, so the short answer is that's not possible. One way just to think about it is that that growth rate of 10% in the first few years is the growth rate of incoming calls that need to be answered by an agent. So in reality, your incoming calls might be somewhat higher anyway, but already in these early years, technology is taking care of the more simple queries. Like now, if I call my bank and I just want to know my balance, I don't need to speak to somebody anymore. I can just do it through the phone. Um, the other thought about it is, in a call center, I mean, maybe this is what you're experiencing, but staff turnover is high, and then if your volume of incoming calls grows very quickly, then you're in a really, really challenging recruitment situation. You literally need to recruit whatever, 30, 40, 50% of your existing staff you need to add each year. So the short answer is no. If it would be valuable, then it's worth thinking about. But what it's now illustrating is already the challenges that come from growth.
That's helpful. Thank you. And I'm going to ask a couple of related questions from some other folks here, kind of going out of order. Does the expected, this is sort of related to what you're just asking, does the expected calls per agent per hour change with AI, or is that unrelated to calling efficiency? Does the AI kind of change the efficiency of the agents?
No, it doesn't. So
Okay.
all that AI does is it takes over calls that otherwise would be answered by agents. The efficiency of agents is impacted by things like training and their engagement, um, and also their workload.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Just a few more questions for today here. Uh, let's see. Okay, there's a bunch of questions asked about how to pay for the simulation and things. I guess I'm going to go ahead and answer those questions since, just to kind of go through that. So the first question is there a minimum number of seats that you sell per license? And there is. The minimum is 5, so that's the smallest number of licenses that are available for sale. So 5 licenses per class. Um, uh, and then there's a question around how is that license, like what's the structure of it? So the licenses are built to be run kind of as Tim was explaining today in a workshop or a class. And, as we were talking about a moment ago, there's a couple of ways that those can work. One is the class could be done in a single session, like you might run it as a workshop for say 3 hours or 2 hours, as we we're suggesting. And then at the end of that, when that's over, then those licenses are consumed. And if you're running another class, say a month later or something like that, then there'd be new licenses that would be required for running that class. But the sim doesn't need to be done. A single run of the simulation doesn't need to be done in 3 hours. If, for example, you're assigning it as homework, you could have the sim be open and available for the same users, the same learners over the course of a week or two. Let's say you wanted to have them run it with those learners and then debrief it, or perhaps you say after the sim's over, you want to have them run it again or have it available for a period of time. That can be left over for those same learners again. And that gets into the subscription model here. The way it works is it's per play. So someone asked about the per play model here as well in terms of how it works. So those are all good questions regarding licensing that I can help with today, Tim. And I think that is it. I don't see any other questions coming in right now. If there are other ones that we missed, we'll review these later, and we'll be sure to respond to you by email. And again, if you're interested in getting a free trial to the simulation, please contact us at sales@forio.com, and we'll set that up for you, and you can try it out and receive the learning materials. Thanks a lot, everyone.